Bueno, bienvenidos a las charlas de Ático. Hoy tenemos el placer, el inmenso placer, el realmente magno honor de charlar con Philip Hoare. Bueno, al final lo vamos a hablar sobre todo de esta pues, magnífica edición de Leviatán o la ballena que sacamos pues, con ocasión de nuestro 15º aniversario. Para nosotros nos hace muy feliz estar hoy hablando con Philip Hoare y sobre todo editar este libro de nuevo. Lo hemos publicado en sucesivas ediciones, siempre con gran éxito, y nos hace muy feliz porque al final es el primer libro, de los primeros libros que publicamos allá por 2010. Philip Hoare, bueno, pues es una persona muy carismática, enseguida lo descubriréis. Estuvo a punto de nacer en un submarino, pero bueno, al final acabó llegando al mundo en una casa de ladrillo en Southampton. Luego también estuvo cerca de convertirse en estrella del punk, pero bueno, finalmente le tiró más el mar y la literatura. Es un ensayista magnífico con un estilo pues, tan personal como sugerente y es, como vais a comprobar, un pozo de sabiduría infinita pues, sobre la vida, sobre el mar y sobre las ballenas y el arte en particular. Leviatán o la ballena es un ensayo deslumbrante, pues un libro terriblemente sugerente en el que nos abullimos en el mar, tanto para descubrir las ballenas, pero también nuestra propia historia y las profundidades de nuestra alma. Premio BBC Samuel Johnson al mejor libro de no ficción, pues es una obra que ha conquistado a multitud de lectores, entre ellos, pues, por ejemplo, a Antonio Muñoz Molina. Philip, además, es también autor de otros libros publicados en Ático de los Libros, como por ejemplo Alberto y la ballena, que es pues, el que nos descubre digamos, el poder obsesivo del arte y la naturaleza, y también de otros libros, como por ejemplo El mar interior o El alma del mar, en el que nos muestra el mar como solo Philip Hoare sabe hacerlo. Además, muy pronto pues, llegarán a nuestras librerías William Blake y los monstruos marinos del mar, que también es una maravillosa exploración del mar, el amor, lo romántico y lo terrible a partir pues, bueno, de la obra del más fascinante y también del más moderno y el más original de los artistas románticos. Sin más dilación, vamos a hablar ya con Philip Hoare. Philip, it's a pleasure having you here. So pleased, so honored. Yeah.
It's my pleasure. Hola.
Yeah. So you see that sea is your punk. How did your relationship with the sea begin?
So I'm talking to you from Southampton on the south coast of England. This is the house where I grew up. I came back to live here after my parents died. And my room upstairs, it's the same room where I work, is a really little room with a little sloping roof, and the windows open, and the sea is about 1 kilometre away.
Yeah.
So I can't see it, but I can feel it. And I can hear the foghorns of the ships in the morning when the mist is thick on the water, and the seagulls fly around my house. And the storms come in from the southwest, and you can't get away from the fact that the sea is very close, but I can't see it.
Yeah.
It's almost like a ghost in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And when I grew up, I left Southampton, I went to London to go to college, and then I got involved in punk. And for 20 years, I lived underground, like a person in a cave. I hardly ever saw daylight. You know, I didn't go to bed until 5 o'clock in the morning. All my time was spent in nightclubs and concerts. I was managing bands, and I ran a record label, and I was a writer. And I think I got claustrophobic in London, the very narrow streets of London, like canyons. Compressing, keeping me in, you know, the tube, you know, I used to go to work on the tube all the way home. So I didn't even see the surface when I was going to work.
All the time.
And then, so one day when I was unemployed, and I actually didn't have a job at this point, and I was unemployed, so, and I felt sort of disconsolate and unhappy with myself in a way. And I realized I'd never reconciled myself to the sea, which is kind of where I came from. We all come from the sea, the amniotic sea in our mother's bellies. You know, we are in this little sea inside, the salty sea inside our mothers. And I felt sort of separated from the natural world, having spent all this time in London. And I didn't know how to swim properly. I was always really scared of the sea. I was really scared of the sea. When I was a boy, my mum used to tell me a story about the house where she grew up, which was an old Victorian house, a little way away from here. And there was a big Victorian bath, one of those really deep cast iron baths, which could almost fall in, you know, almost drown in. And she told me that this bath, I never saw this bath, that my granddad, to make the children less scared at bath time, he'd painted a great big spouting whale along the side of the bath.
Like a clone, yeah.
Yeah.
Very spooky.
Very spooky. And actually, that just made me more scared of the sea.
Yeah.
And I realized why I was scared of the sea was, number one, because I couldn't swim properly. Yeah. My parents couldn't swim. Yeah, I was living very close to the sea. And that was a great disconnection. And then I was fascinated since a little boy with whales in the way that some other people become fascinated with dinosaurs.
Okay.
So whales became like living dinosaurs to me. They were like these monsters of the sea. Yeah. And that was one other reason why I was scared of the sea, because I thought they might eat me. Because, we read the Bible at school about Jonah being swallowed by the whale, or read about the story of Pinocchio, who was swallowed by the whale. And then, of course, the story of Moby Dick, which I sort of knew, because I watched it on a little black and white television in the corner of this room, little tiny black and white television. And it terrified me, again, the terrifying whale. But then that was set against the fact that also, when I was a child,
yeah, sure,
we had this record.
Oh, yeah.
This is the record that I had in 1973. And suddenly the whale became something different. He became an artist, a poet, the songs of the humpback whale.
Yeah.
It wasn't a monster anymore. It was something almost alien, almost human. And it was quite ironic, because I'd been working in records and music for all this time, and then suddenly the whale came up from my past, and I suddenly thought, And so I went to America, and I'd been to America a few times. I've been to New York, but mostly in cities. I was mostly in New York, I stayed. And then my friend John Waters is a filmmaker who works he spends his summers in Provincetown. And Provincetown is at the end of a great big sandy spit coming out of the coast. So there's Boston here, New York down here, and this great big arm out into the Atlantic. So Spain's all the way over there.
Yeah.
And draw a direct line, 3,000 miles, and you come to Provincetown. Yeah. And John used to live and work, he still does, in a house at the very tip of the end, Provincetown. Provincetown was a great whaling port. In Herman Melville's day, in the time of Moby Dick, they hunted whales from there. I didn't know that. When I went to visit him, John invited me to visit him. And I didn't know there were whales there. I had learnt to swim by now. I learnt to swim in a very Victorian public baths in the East End of London, a really strange place. But I'd learnt to swim, and now I really had started to have this relationship to the sea. And Provincetown was amazing because it's just surrounded by the sea. The sea is completely all around you. And it's like this great reflecting mirror. You know how photographers use mirrors to reflect light? Take photographs. And the sea does that. That's why it's a great place for artists. People like Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko all worked in Provincetown. The amazing light, for artists. And so I went and spent 2 weeks there with John and going to the beach and everything. And it wasn't until the day I was leaving and I was getting the ferry back from Provincetown to Boston Airport to fly back to Europe, that I had time to spare. The ferry didn't go for 4 hours, so I had time to spare. And at the end of the pier, where the ferry was a sign advertising whale watching. So I saw this sign saying whale watching, and I was very dubious about it because of the captive whale I'd seen as a child. Nevertheless, I got on the boat and paid my $12 or whatever it was. And 20 minutes later, out in the Atlantic Ocean, this humpback whale leapt out of the water right in front of me. It was only about 10 meters away from me. I mean, amazing. It's a 15-meter long animal with these 3-meter long flippers. It was like a kind of barnacled angel just hanging there. And it created a sea, like a halo, like a saint almost. it's like a miraculous experience. And being a very accomplished writer, I responded with one word. I said, fuck, because I couldn't compute this experience. It was like meeting a creature from another planet. And for that moment that it hung there in the air for a split second, it was like a challenge. It was like, look at me. This is the reality of what I am. You know, I'm not an animal on a record whose song you're listening to. I'm not a cartoon. I'm not a TV film. You know, I'm reality. And that's what really started me on my voyage into the world of the whale.
Wow. Wow, fascinating. I mean, especially taking into account that you were like frightened by whales when you were small, like seeing that monster there. Yeah, so let's also talk about monsters and Leviathan. Yeah, for the reader that hasn't read still like Leviathan or the whale, which they should be reading right now. What are they gonna be finding in this book?
Sorry, could you just say that again, Fernando?
Yeah.
What's the question? Sorry.
What will the reader find in Leviathan or the whale?
What will we find in it?
Yeah.
You'll find everything I could know or learn about a whale.
Yeah.
At the beginning of Moby Dick, Herman Melville's Moby Dick, he has this whole series of extracts. It's just called extracts. And it's everything that he's been able to find in the New York Public Library to do with whales. And it goes from the Bible and the Quran through to John Milton's Paradise Lost, everything that he could put about the whale. And because that's what Moby Dick is about. And I suppose what I was trying to do is write a kind of, not write a modern Moby Dick, because that book is 136 chapters long and I couldn't possibly compete with that. But to understand what Melville's obsession with the whale was, he called it that grand hooded phantom, as if it was like a ghost, like it was almost a spirit possessing him. Moby Dick is this eerie creature, a great white whale. At one point, he calls it the Shaker God incarnate. It's able to be in more than one place at the same time. And that's what drew me in. And I think that's what the book is about, is trying to talk about an animal which is so big, it's very difficult to comprehend something living, but so big that you can't, like when you see a whale, you can't see it all in one glance. You have to kind of move your head like that. The first time I saw a blue whale, it came through my vision and just went on and on and on and on. I mean, it's like an aircraft. It's the size of an aircraft. It's very difficult to relate to something like that. And so as I kept going back to Provincetown. This is what made me write the book. I kept going back because I became obsessed with whales. I'd go on 3 whale watches a day. I wouldn't get off the boat. John Waters accused me of being a whale stalker. And he suggested me that I should write this book because he said, you're clearly passionate about it. And I said, how can anyone write a book about whales after Herman Melville? So that was kind of the challenge I set myself in a way. So I write about the whale from a very personal point of view. I write about my experience, that how this animal, which was originally fearful to me, by the end of the book, not to spoil the book, but becomes something else, something like a guardian, like a sentinel, like a guardian angel almost in a way. Partly because they're such an emblem of our natural world. They have Roger Payne, who's the person who recorded this album, Roger Payne. He's probably the person who saved the whale, to be honest. He said, the song of a whale is a sound as big as the ocean. So that really made me think that we are drawn into the whale's world by guilt almost. Because we slaughtered these whales. In the Bay of Biscay, in the 17th and 18th century, we drove the grey whale and the northern right whale to extinction. That was off the Spanish coast. All around the world, whales have been killed in their millions. there's a sense of guilt, I think, that I feel. And I wanted to try and, so I record in that book, in the book, in Leviathan, I record all that. But I also record the amazing thing that in 1983, we decided to stop hunting them. And even since I finished writing Leviathan, even since Attico published the book, whales have really, really returned to their numbers in a way. They're doing quite well. Humpback whales down at the South Atlantic and around Antarctica, there are tens of thousands of them now. Wow. So there's a sense of some positive message here that we can change things if we want to. And I think we change things because we start to understand things. If we understand whales as mammals like us, with culture like us, with a history like us, with families like us, then it becomes very difficult to persecute them. You know, unfortunately, whales are subject to many dangers still, but there's one thing that we humans can be proud of is that we did actually sort of save the whale.
Yeah, in a way, they seem like to be the humans of the sea. And I mean, they seem like to embody sea and the ocean, to be the symbol of ocean and sea. That's the way I see whales, at least. Yeah.
Because so you have this huge thing, and Herman Melville talks about the ocean's skin, like the skin of the ocean. And one of the things, because as a writer, as an artist, that's the tantalizing thing. What lies underneath that skin? You know, we can't see through it. It's like we can't see into outer space, but there's this inner space that surrounds the planet, our planet. Most of our planet is water. Most of our planet is the whale's domain. It's not, if anyone's the master of this planet, it's the whale. You know, they've been around a long time before us, 6 million years before us.
They're huge also. So.
And they're huge. You know, they don't, you know, we think they're just, you know, what use are whales? They can't drive cars. They can't, you know, pay taxis. They can't.
Well, who knows? Maybe in the abyss. Who knows?
To me, a whale's life seems to be pretty good.
All day singing, swimming around.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, and also because I think the nature of the whales, there's 85 different species of whales if you include dolphins and porpoises and that. So they're kind of, you know, when you were a kid, did you ever have those cards where you'd collect cards in the playground, like either with footballers or, you know, cartoons on them? Yeah, little cards, bubblegum cards, whatever. You swap them. Yeah. That's what whales became like to me. And so I actually, you know, because when the book came out and it did quite well, I was invited to various festivals everywhere. So I only accepted an invitation to a festival where I could go to by the sea, and hopefully where I could see whales. Yeah. So I got to places like Sri Lanka and Australia and New Zealand and had amazing experiences with whales.
Have you seen them all, or somebody is missing in your list?
I haven't seen them all, no, but I would love to have. The one place I saw the most whales was getting a ferry from Portsmouth on the south coast of England to Santander.
Yeah, that ferry, yeah.
And you see dozens of different species from there. It's really amazing. In 3 days, I saw 1,000 whales.
Wow.
I mean, that was quite a lot of pilot whales, you know, together, but yeah.
Well, just imagine in the past that area, like the Bay of Biscay, that it should have been full with whales. Nowadays there are not so many, but if you just saw like 1,000 whales, I mean, just imagine in the past.
I know.
Million of whales.
Yeah. So also, because when I was making the book, I was making a film for the BBC about Moby Dick. So we filmed in the Azores. And the Azores is one of the best places in the world to see whales. And the plan there was to film me in the water with whales, specifically sperm whales, very different to humpback whales, the big toothed animals, big square heads, you know. And so we went there to film them. And we went out in it's a rigid inflatable boat, a rib, like a speedboat. Were taken out by one of the people who they go whale watching there. And as we left the harbour, pod of dolphin came in and started riding in front of the boat, like leaping in front of the boat, as though they were taking us somewhere. I know it sounds fantastic, but and then they sort of peeled off in the direction. Then suddenly I saw on the horizon just these lumps floating. They weren't jumping. They weren't like humpback whales. They weren't jumping. They were just like logs, like trees. I thought they were trees for a moment. And then the captain of our little boat, he is Joao, he said, there you are. There's at least a dozen sperm whales. And it was only when one great big head came up like that, and I realized they were sperm whales. And they're the whales we all drew as children. You know what I mean? Sort of big square head,
yeah,
the spouty face and a sort of smiley face. Very strange animals. One of the deepest diving animals. They can dive for up to 2 kilometers and stay down for like 2 hours. So anyway, the idea was to film me in the water with these whales. I'd never been in the water with a whale. I never learned to swim until I was about 30 years old. So it was a scary thing. So I got in the water, and there was a camera woman who was meant to be filming me, but her camera malfunctioned. It wasn't working. So they pulled her out of the water. And the director of the film said, "Okay, Philip, come back. We can't film. Get back in the boat." I wasn't getting back in the boat. I kept on swimming towards these whales. Yeah. And then I realized I didn't know what I was doing. It was just insane. I thought, you're swimming towards one of the biggest animals, like swimming with elephants or something.
Not carnivores, so
yeah,
not human carnivores.
Yeah, unbelievable. And then one of the animals left the group and started swimming directly at me. And this is a really big animal, like 20 meters long. And it was a female. I now realize it was a female because they're matriarchal animals. They are ruled by the matriarch. I felt her echolocation, her sonar moving through my body like an MRI scanner, like if you're scanned in a hospital or whatever, or a photocopier, a printer. I was being recreated in sound, and the sound was being bounced back to her head, her great big square head. And it was really ironic because I realized, here's an animal I've come to try and understand, and here's an animal trying to understand me. She was trying to work out what I was. She knew I wasn't a fish or a shark or a seal. She knew I was something weird and flappy in the water. She knew I wasn't very good at swimming. And she came closer and closer and closer. I thought she was going to swallow me. But she didn't. She just went alongside like that. And this little eye, the eye is only a big, big animal, but the eye is only about that big. And she looked directly at me with this great big eye. It was the most incredible moment in my life. The most incredible moment in my life.
Wow, it was in a way your Moby Dick. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then she dove straight from down like that, going straight down from the blue into the black. And I watched her go down below me. Through my scuba mask, I could see her go. It was like a dream. It was like a dream I had all my life, really, in a way. But it was really happening. Even as I tell you this, I can't really believe it happened in a way. It's almost like it happened to someone else. But it did happen to me. And yeah, that changed my life, really, in a way. That kind of, it's entirely different perspective puts on your life. It's like meeting an alien, really.
Well, in a way, it's like the same that happened to you. You were like when pursuing that whale that was on the shores, but eventually he didn't find it. But you did find it, and you wanted it to change your life. But it was the phantom of that whale that changed his life, and you did find a whale, and it did change your life.
Yeah. Well, of course, that's the whole thing about Moby Dick is the idea of pursuit. But what are you trying to find? You're actually probably trying to find yourself, really, in a way, My mother had died about 2 years, actually a year before less than that, actually, 9 months before. And I realized there was because this matriarch, this big female whale, like a big mother, I felt that I was kind of an orphan and she was a mother. the thing about whales, because they are very like us, sperm whale has the biggest brain on the planet. You know, they are very intelligent animals. She would have been able to sense what I was. The echolocation of a whale means they can see inside you. Wow. They can tell your emotions. So, you know, human beings get hot when they're bothered or angry, or cool when they're okay and calm. And they can tell that I could feel she felt how I felt in a way. That's kind of arrogant, because we humans always think the whole world revolves around us, you know. But I mean, the thing is, sometimes, so, you know, scientists find it difficult sometimes to describe their work, especially when they're working, whale scientists, when they're working with whales, they find it difficult to not be emotional, to be sort of objective about these animals and describe them scientifically. But it's really interesting. All the whale scientists I've ever met are a little bit crazy. They've been crazy by the whales. I mean, they really, because they know they're dealing with this extraordinary culture. And we know that, you know, in the future, probably we will use AI to interpret their communications. I'm really worried about that, because I wonder what the whales will say about us.
Yeah. Well, not good things, I guess. Yeah, but also it's like when you get in the sea. I mean, you are like a great swimmer. What you were a great swimmer, but you develop like the routine of swimming. So how has that like changed your perspective of life, of whales, of living?
Well, the sea now is really, so I swam in the sea really early this morning, like in the dark, you know, 2 or 3 o'clock. I swim, really get out. So I wake up in the middle of the night, I suppose, to some people, and I go and I cycle on my bike. I go, it's about a kilometre to the sea here, and it's pitch black. You know, the distant docks of Southampton, the port of Southampton, the distance, but then just blackness and the stars. And I really, really love that. I love going in. It's like swimming in space. And I love the fact that, you know, I'm still near a town, but I'm suspended. I mean, it's like I'm weightless. It's like being, you know, it's going on a spacewalk almost. You know, you're in an element, you're still in the world, obviously, but you're suspended from the world. And that, you know, all our lives nowadays are spent in front of screens like this, whether on our phones or on our computers. You know, we are land-bound and like sort of almost chained to this sort of experience, rather than the natural experience, which is just there. You know, if you live near the sea, you can just go and jump in. It doesn't cost any money. As long as you're careful, it's safe. You know, it's an amazing thing, because there's something about the sea which I don't think poetry would exist without the sea. It's almost as though we have to have the idea that there is this huge, deep element in the world which is kind of like a reservoir. It's like a profound place. The sea is a very inspirational place, because we don't understand it. You know, most of the world's life lives in the sea. 90% of the living biomass of the world is in the ocean. And we only know 1/4 of the species that live in the ocean. We haven't identified them. And there's lots, more people have been to the moon than have been to the very bottom of the sea, you know, the Mariana Trench. Yeah. It's an unknown place still. Of course, we're exploiting it more and more and more, but it's still something romantic about it. You know, so many poets write about the sea. There's so much imagination, you know, think of books by Joseph Conrad or Melville, you know, Jaws, you know, the idea of the terrifying aspect of the sea. There's so much poetry written about the sea. Lorca wrote about the sea. For a writer, it's such an inspiration, because it changes your mind. It changes your mind very subtly.
And I mean, they're also like so different seas, like in literature. You have, of course, the ones you've said, like in English literature, in American literature, but then you have like the seas in Greek literature. You have like the famous thalassa, where we are at home.
Yeah.
That was like the Greeks' home, but they also have like that Sri Lanka, Charybdis. They did have the monsters. They have like Poseidon. Yeah, every culture like relates in a different way to see and see like different thing, but sees like a source of the unknown, a source also like of the sublime. Yeah, that seems to be the case. Yeah,
exactly. The sublime is very true. I think if you think about that, it's really interesting. If you look at creation myths like the Bible, well, it's not a myth to some people, but you know, the Genesis, the life begins in the sea. The God created the great whale. The whale appears as a symbol in the Quran. The sense of actually, in evolution, that is where we came from. Yeah. We did come out of the sea. So this sort of ancestral, you know, relationship to the sea as a place of shelter in a way that almost as though, you know, it's like leaving the womb. It's like the sea we left, you know. And also, it's really funny because all in the womb, we all look like fishes or little whales, little embryos. That's what we look like, you know. And then we uncurl and come into the world. But we're out. One whale scientist I spoke to, Hal Whitehead, works in Nova Scotia in Canada. He said he wondered whether whales got scared of being in the sea, surrounded by, they can be approached from any direction. Yeah. And I was thinking about that this morning because the sea I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still scared of the sea. Even though I swim every day, I am still scared of the sea. I think it's good to be scared of the sea because you have to be aware and wary of it. But that sense of, you know, being vulnerable, but also held up. So there's a contrast. So you are open to things, but you're also held, suspended. It's a kind of embrace. Your body is embraced in a way. The poet Baudelaire said it was like being kissed 1,000 times a minute. To swim was like being kissed 1,000 times a minute. It's a very sensual place.
Okay, so that's maybe the reason why you try like to swim in every place you find. I'm going to quote one paragraph by in Albert and the Whale. Yeah. In the dark before dawn, in the park where Philip the Planet King hunted, I slide down the side of a fountain and into the ornamental pool. The water's thick and green. It's been here since 16-something. My subterfuge relies on me looking like a gog. The avenues are already roaring into life. What happened here? Because so poetical, but people want to know. Like
I know. Well, that's in the park behind the Prado.
Yeah, El Retiro.
Yeah, because I was in Madrid and I was so far from the sea, I had to swim. So I went out at 5 o'clock in the morning. I swam in the lake. El Tank, is it the El Tank they call it? The tank?
El Retiro is a park. And
the Retiro is a park. I think the park is called El Tank.
Maybe, I don't know. For me, it's like the lake or wherever.
Yeah. So, and then someone told me afterwards that there were really big fish in there, pike, which fish with teeth, which is a bit scary. But yeah.
I was more scared about dirtiness.
Yeah, I have to swim everywhere. It's really sometimes it's kind of really difficult because wherever I am, you know, I can only go somewhere by the sea or unless I can find some water somewhere.
So you are like Davy Jones, basically.
Yeah.
The bucket of
Yeah. I feel very, if I haven't swum, I feel really edgy and nervous. You know, I really, the best thing, if you ever want to get me to do something, say, you can swim there. I'll come. But yeah.
So what does the Leviathan that has always like fascinated us, and how do you like talk about that in your book, like in Leviathan or the Whale? Because I mean, also the title Leviathan or the Whale, like it's like a reminiscence of Moby Dick or the Whale. So you have that really complex of a group of meanings like Moby Dick, the Leviathan, the sublime, the West, the fascination. Yeah, so how does everything relate in your book? Yeah.
It's really interesting. So the Leviathan is how John Milton refers to the whale in Paradise Lost. And that seemed to establish a very visual image of the whale. And I became very interested, and I am very interested in the way the whale is portrayed in history. It's like, as Herman Melville says in Moby Dick, the whale never floated itself for its own portrait. Really, almost, it's another ironic thing. It's the biggest animal in the world, but it's almost impossible to draw or imagine even. We knew what the world looked like from outer space. We knew what the planet Earth looked like from outer space before we photographed a whale underwater.
Wow.
So this sense of a monster, something which is primeval, like a sea dragon. You know, the early medieval pictures of whales, kind of exaggerated animals with claws and tusks and sort of hairy bits. You know, those extraordinary, like, dragons at the edge of the world when they believed the world was a disc, when the world was flat. And right at the edges were these dragons which, you know, could engulf you. And they were very confused with krakens, you know, the sea monsters with the snaky legs, or giant snakes, sea serpents. They were the same thing, you know, because actually if you see a whale, let's say if you see a fin whale, which is a long, narrow, it almost looks like a giant snake, you know. You only see a little bit of them. So your imagination works on the rest. What can the rest of that animal look like? You know, a whale, you only see a bit, but it's huge because I'm only seeing its head. What is the rest of it like? So there's a sense of a jigsaw puzzle almost in your head. You're kind of trying to fit together, what could this animal be like? Why is it here? Why did God make these animals? What are they doing? You know? So I think for an artist, that's a really wonderful thing to work with, because they can just create the most fantastical things, or they create a real image. And the real images of whales, the only ones that were real, as Herman Melville said, were the ones that stranded on the shore. I worked with a Mexican artist called Gabriel Orozco, who in Andalusia was working on the skeleton of a fin whale which had been buried in the park. It had come on shore in Andalusia, and it had been buried in the park in the sand and earth, and its body had rotted away, so there was just the skeleton of it left. And Orozco, to create a work of art, tattooed the whale. He used graphite, pencil, and assistants, and they created these kind of almost like tribal patterns on this fin whale's skeleton. It's an incredible work of art because it made it look fantastical again. It was a real skeleton of a real animal that had really died, but it had become fantastic again. It was almost like an Aztec dragon, like a sea dragon or whatever. And if you think, I'm going to show you, this is a sperm whale's tooth. So this is a sperm whale's tooth. This is 250 years old. And the sailors, when they were whaling, they used to take the teeth out of the animal's mouth after they carved it up and boiled down its fat for blubber. And then they started carving images on them. Like, this is called scrimshaw. This is a reproduction. This isn't a real one. This would be very valuable if I had it. And they made images out of the whale. So the whale became kind of like almost like an art gallery in its death. You know, the way we use the whales. The other thing is this. So that's
the unicorn.
Yeah, the whale. It's called a narwhal. Look how long it is. I can't fit it in on the picture. This isn't a real one. It's a model. It's a reproduction. Again, $20,000 this would cost if you wanted to buy one. But when medieval people found this on the narwhal, an Arctic whale, they thought it was a real unicorn. Wow. In fact, one of these was given to Queen Elizabeth of England in the 16th century. It was worth the price of a new castle. She could have built a castle with the value of this tooth. And it was said to have magical properties. If you ground this up, it protected you against being poisoned. It's a very mystical creature. It's the mythical unicorn. The whales became myths, really, in people's imagination. These strange elements, the ivory tusks and things. Were they even real, And they became like a physical embodiment of the strangeness of the sea. Because people are aware there must be lots of creatures in the ocean, but you couldn't see them. So the whale, again, becomes the one visible thing, like the image of the whale there.
Yeah, that's what they see.
Yeah. So it's... And I think that's why Moby Dick obsessed me, and it still does. I think it's such a beautiful book. I think it's the greatest American novel because it deals with so many things. It deals with the way we are in the world. At one point in the book, Melville talks about, will the whale diminish? Will he perish? He's imagining a future world when the whale might go extinct because of the amount of whales they were killing, the amount of whales they were hunting. Of course, he was right. It nearly did go extinct. He's quite a visionary, Melville. And he says no. He says, no, they won't go extinct because the world will be flooded anew and the whale will spout his frothed defiance to the skies. So this idea of the world being flooded, which is going to happen, and the whale will swim free. I don't know whether that will happen, but this notion of myth, really, and the whale, but the whale of reality. Melville really plays with that. That's what I love about that notion, that it's a really it's an endless supply of symbolism, really, in a way, for human beings.
I mean, whale and water. I mean, they have like an essential religious symbolism. I mean, for example, when somebody gets baptized, they get into water, they away themselves in a way. The whale is also like that idea of seeing, of whatever you want to say. You want to, you have a meaning in the symbol of a whale. So that's what makes them so fascinating, I would say. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's why my book about Albert and the Whale, which is a book about Albert Dürer, the German artist, some of your viewers will remember his picture of a rhinoceros. He drew an amazing picture of a rhinoceros, almost like a sea monster itself. This amazing horned creature, all scaly and plated and with these strange hoofs. It's almost like a whale on the land. And shortly after that, Dürer heard, he was on a visit to Zeeland in the Netherlands. He'd gone there from Nuremberg. And he heard of a stranded whale, a whale that had been stranded on the shore of Zeeland, on the North Sea shore. And he journeyed to try and see it. I think he was, because this print he made of the rhinoceros is big success. It's one of his biggest hits, He sold lots of this print. And I think he wanted to make a print of the whale because that was the sea version of a rhinoceros, and he'd heard stories of the sea unicorns. But before he got there, there was a huge storm, and the ship he was on nearly crashed into land, and he nearly drowned. He nearly drowned trying to catch this whale. And it's almost like a story of Moby Dick, really, rehearsed in the year 1520. This is 1520. It's almost like a pre-rehearsal of Moby Dick, and it's almost like he was being punished for his arrogance, for his impudence in trying to draw this most extraordinary, miraculous creature. And in fact, the whale was washed away by the time he got there. But he'd been told it was a mile long. The whale was a mile long. So this notion, the whale is a kind of impossible creature. We need those stories in our lives in a way. We like to think this... we've controlled the world with AI and, and everything. And Elon Musk rules the sky with his bloody satellites. But there's still something that is beyond our control. The sea is still just about beyond our control, and it contains animals we have yet to know. There are whales that we know exist, but we've never seen them at sea. We've seen them from their dead bodies on the beach, but big whales, 15 meters long. So I think that's, as the child, the little child in me just loves the idea that there's these stories yet to be told. That's what I try and do in my books, is tell those stories.
Yeah. So I was thinking we would make like a Champions League of whales. Did you feel like? So I have some candidates here, like some teams. We have Willie the Whale, we have the Leviathan, we have the Gibraltar gang, that killer whales that used to attack yachts in the Gibraltar Strait.
Yeah.
We have those guys in our, we're going to sign up them.
Right, yeah.
Also have the Jonas whale,
Yes.
the Pinocchio whale also,
Yeah.
Moby Dick, the Durero, the whale of Durer that was a corpse, but I mean, maybe she has like special powers or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we have Wall Street whales.
Yeah.
So we have an algorithm, complex algorithm here, and we have we have the matches. So between the Gibraltar gang and the Wall Street whales, which one is winning?
I don't know. I love the story of the orca or the killer whales off the Iberian Peninsula, off Spain, Gibraltar, Portugal. That's really interesting because that's a whole whale culture thing. Yeah. So we had the sperm whale, the whale of the great teeth, which we hunted. That represented kind of a dragon, something to be defeated. Then we have the humpback whale, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth. It's that we saved the whale. Now we have the orca comes along. You didn't know about this. Orca, amazing hunter. It's called a killer whale because it's very good at killing whales. And when I was in the waters off Sri Lanka about 10 years ago with my friend Andrew Sutton, actually lives in Seville, and we were in the water with a big group of sperm whales, and we thought, this is amazing. And then suddenly we saw either side orca, killer whales, trying to attack the sperm whales. It was the most astonishing thing. And as we were watching, one of the killer whales peeled off and swam straight towards us. So we got out of the water and we watched as these killer whales tried to attack these huge, there's about 30 sperm whales and about 20 killer whales. They couldn't, the sperm whales had created this kind of close formation. They drawn in around the females and the calves, the young whales, to protect them. And actually, the killer whales couldn't get at them. But as the killer whales moved off, so we followed them because they were doing all this splashing about the surface. We were really interested. Yeah. And they started circling our boat, around the boat. They rammed it 5 times. And then they came to the side and tried to flip our boat over. They didn't do it because I think they were playing with us. But I suddenly realized this is real intelligence. And they are playing with us. If they wanted to turn our boat, it was only a little tiny, like 5-meter fishing boat, they could have turned it over us and eaten us if they wanted to.
Yeah, and I think like killer whales have never attacked humans as in this Gibraltar Strait. That's the first time. So it's kind of maybe they're changing the culture towards us.
Well, I think they're definitely reacting to what we do in the water. Yeah. There's a lot, especially in those waters. There's a lot of tuna fishing, and that's the killer whale's food. So their food is being taken. There's a lot of noise now in the water, which affects their health and their hunting and their communication. So, and they're very aware of us. All whales are very aware of us, I think. So, and orca killer whales are incredibly intelligent. You can tell. It was like watching the way they were playing with us. It was like I could see they were holding back. They were kind of teaching us a lesson in a way. It was the most amazing thing. It was because we'd seen these sperm whales, which are very peaceful animals. They, because they're so huge, normally they're not a threat to anyone. And then these orca come in, they're like sea wolves, going here and there, darting everywhere. So beautiful, almost like animatronic, almost like robots. They're almost like AI themselves, very black and white, very graphic, cartoon-like, yeah. And they're just so beautiful as well. But to realize that we were at their mercy, they could do with us what they wanted,
Yeah.
There's no one to come and save us. We're 8 nautical miles out in the middle of the Indian Ocean. No one could save us, It was
So,
yeah.
So they beat Wall Street ways like 99%.
Yeah.
So we have a winner in,
Yeah.
in this match.
I love them. I love them so much. I would quite like to have been eaten by an orca, actually, to be honest. Quite a good way to go.
well, I mean, everybody has to go in a way, or not?
Yeah, exactly. Quite a way to go.
It's they won't chew us. They won't. That's no. They say no. We don't want to mess with the humans because otherwise something bad is going to happen. But I think they think, and they think in a way that's what's going on in their head. Like that's the reason we don't want to mess with humans.
No.
And then like the second match, Leviathan or Moby Dick, which one would win like that? since it's the Champions League, I would say like I have a favorite one. I win like all times almost between Leviathan and Moby Dick.
Yeah, my favorite whale is the sperm whale. Really, I spent so much time with them, and they are again, they could do what they like with us. But I've never felt so. I remember my childhood stories about the bath with the whale and how scared I was. Now I have never felt so safe or so peaceful as I have felt in the water with those whales. I feel really almost protected by them. They're very gentle. They're very curious. They want to see what you are, but they are continually in touch with one another. They're like, they create this, you can feel their culture, the way they're talking to each other over like tens of kilometers, They are like, there's something very familial about them. They're like a family, and that it seems almost as though for a while they sort of tolerate you in a way. They're not going to do anything to you. Also, I'm very aware that they don't. A male sperm whale doesn't have enemies. A killer whale can't do anything to a big male sperm whale. They are incredibly powerful animals. Their tails are huge and very, very powerful. Their teeth and everything. No, they don't attack anyone. They defend one another, but they don't attack. So I really, really love sperm whales.
And also the name of the sperm whales. Where does it come from? Because it's a funny name. Let's call it that way.
It's an ugly name, really, because the great sort of the head of the sperm whale, that they thought that when they pierced that with a harpoon, the oil that came out of it was the whale semen, sperm. It's just the oil, and of course it isn't. It's because it's kind of ugly name. It's like humpback whale is a really, humpback whale is a really ugly name for a whale.
Yeah.
Lots of the human names for whales. I don't know what whale. I wonder what a whale's name for itself is. What does a whale call itself? Probably something like.
Yeah.
Something. But yeah, I think it's a real. It's a marker of the way that we have misused whales, that we call it the right whale because it was the right whale to hunt. It floated when it was killed. These all to do with us and what a whale's use to us, rather than its own beauty.
For the Spanish reader, they will find like in some months to come a new book by Philip Hoare, like William Blake and the Monsters of Sea Love.
Yeah.
What is it really going to find in this new book?
I'm going to show you the cover. Hold on.
Oh, magnificent! Yeah.
So this monster, a sea monster. I became really interested. The artist William Blake, who was an inspiration to Herman Melville, as many other people as well, very inspiring artist. And he was fascinated with sea monsters. And the book is a kind of exploration of his imagination and the sea in his imagination, and how he inspired other people, modern artists, artists of his own time. And he's a very visionary artist. He had these visions. He would see animals, he'd see strange creatures, like a sort of, I wonder if I can show you it in here. He's just really, you can see
Wow.
these strange creatures.
I mean, that's magnificent. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's really, really wonderful artist. And he was obsessed with animals and creatures. He wrote a really wonderful poem about the tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forest of the night. What a mortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry. And animals for him are magical creatures. They're like something out of a fairy tale, but also with dark hearts to them in a way. The tiger in the poem is the spirit of revolution, bringing insurrection and change, you know. The sea monster is this strange creature. In fact, whales, he saw whales coming up London during the time in the 18th and 19th century when William Blake was alive. Whales came up London because London was a whaling port. He saw bits of whales. He would have seen whales' teeth. And those, so he saw real sea monsters. And again, his imagination worked on that, like Herman Melville, and creates these fantastical stories. He's a really wonderful artist. He's probably one of my favorite artists. And he was very inspired by Albert Dürer, and he went and he inspired Herman Melville. So he's like this link between the two things. He's a wonderful person.
So it's been an absolute pleasure, like to talk with you during an hour.
Yeah,
I wish it could be longer, but everything has
yeah,
to end at a
yeah,
time.
yeah.
So, bueno, pues ha sido un auténtico placer estar hoy hablando aquí con Philip Hoare. Ya digo que con motivo de la publicación de esta edición de coleccionista especial de Leviatán o la ballena, para celebrar nuestro 15º aniversario de Ático de los Libros. Y bueno, pues como habéis visto, una persona muy carismática que tiene un montón de historias que contar. Y si os ha gustado oírlo hablar, pues más os va a gustar todavía pues leer su libro. Os invito a que lo leáis. Es un ensayo maravilloso, magnífico, no os va a defraudar. So, again, Philip, an absolute pleasure. So, have a nice day.
Muchas gracias. It's been really great fun.
Pleasure. Bye.
Bye.